welcome to Dynamic Discussions first and foremost, and thank you so much for doing it. I know that you probably get a lot of people wanting to talk to you and interview you, so for you to do that for us, it means a great deal.
More and more now than ever, really, since I'm at home and smaller organizations don't have to pick me up and fly me across the country and put me in a hotel for 3 days while I lecture and teach. So I can do that from the comfort of my own living room, as long as my cat stays reasonably quiet. But yeah, so let's see, you're in Arizona, but how wide is your group? How spread out are you?
Everywhere. I mean, we have 2 of our team members that help run the group. They're in Australia. I mean, we're all over the world. Thank God. I mean, well, the power of the internet, right? So
yeah. Well, next weekend, I'm doing a Q&A for the Central Coast Leather Association thing. Their Pride thing is happening next weekend, and there's a big sort of leather contingent, and I'm the interviewed. I'm on the hot seat for about an hour and a half or 2 hours, again, virtually. So
pretty amazing what we're able to do now. So today we get to sit with the legend. We get to sit with one of the icons of our lifestyle. Okay. And I know you laugh, and I've heard you speak in other interviews that, it's not really, it's weird to be addressed that way, but you're a leader, you're a visionary. And so we just are grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
Obviously, Guy Baldwin's you're also an author. I mean, The Ties That Bind is one of the books that have had a profound impact, not only on myself, but a lot of people that I know. And we are definitely grateful to have you. A couple of things that I wanted to just kind of get started with, if that's all right, just dive right in.
Yeah, wherever you like. I've been interviewed a lot.
Yep.
And I can usually keep up unless you slip into some exotic foreign language that I'm unfamiliar with.
I'm out of those, Guy. I have enough.
Well, then we're good. We're good. Oh, one warning. I'm technically on call, and it's possible that I may have to deal with a patient emergency of some sort. And I'll apologize in advance for an interruption if we need to have one.
And
but I can't turn my phone completely off, is what that means.
I absolutely understand. You and I talked about that, and I think it's, that always comes first. So,
I want to make sure that your listeners know that too.
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, just kind of give us a quick, and it doesn't have to be quick because I'm in no rush, but introduction to yourself, how long you've been in the lifestyle, all that information, everyone is out there, I know, but I would like you to just kind of give us a little update, An
update, or when did it start? I mean,
your journey into the lifestyle. And I know we could spend a couple hours probably just talking about that, but.
Well, we could, because it's, there are lots of, like most of us, there are lots of different sort of threads that come together to form the twine or the rope or the string that ultimately leads us to alternative ways to be erotic with one another. We are all misfits at some level, because when parents decided to have kids, they all decided that they wanted to have kids that were inside the box, because they know how to parent those kids, right?
Exactly.
But if you're kinky, and I happen to believe that kinky is an orientation, then you are not inside the box. And so we have to become clever disguisers of a very important part of ourselves. We become really good liars, generally, at an early age, because we know that what we turned out to be is not that welcome, because we're outside the box.
Yes, sir.
And parents like to have kids that they know what to do with. And of course, if you're gay, that doesn't work out. And sooner or later, if you're kinky, then all of the information you got about how to have relationships and so forth is less relevant by far.
When did you enter the lifestyle, Guy?
Well, when I entered the lifestyle, it wasn't a lifestyle. It wasn't thought of. We didn't apply that word to radical sexuality.
Okay.
When I was 18, 3 days after high school graduation, my mother confronted me and asked me if I was homosexual. And I admitted that I was. And she said, well, ain't no homosexual going to live under my roof. You have 1 week to pack your things and leave. She threw me out. And I understand why she did it. I understand it now, why she did it. Nothing in her world prepared her for a son as different as I am. Not church, not family, not state, not school.
Right.
Nothing equipped her.
We don't talk about it.
Yeah. So she didn't want to confront it or, wrestle with that. She was a 35-year-old woman when I was born, and she had an 11-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. So they had the hormones raging every which way, of course. And 3 days earlier, my dad abandoned the family. So she was a single mom suddenly. And then 3 days later, she was a mom with a new baby. Anyway, when mother threw me out, she thought she was hurting me, I think, and I thought she was too. But in fact, $5,000 of therapy later, I realized that she had done me a huge favor, because if she hadn't thrown me out and I hadn't wandered off to Denver, the nearest big city, to try to make my way and found the gay world, if I hadn't done that, if she hadn't thrown me away, I would probably have stayed in that small town, 5,000 people, and maybe even tried to pretend like I was straight and found a girl who I could marry and maybe even have kids and lived a lie, like so many of us from that period did and still do, I'm sure. So by throwing me away, I got a head start at how to be gay, because there's no rule book for that. They don't hand that out in small towns.
Sure.
So I was gay first. But it wasn't long before I started running across the kinds of men that I was really interested in. Because prior to that time, I thought there was only one way to be gay, and that's to be a effeminate, sort of girly boy. And that's what I was. People can't believe that now, but it's true. I had all of the trappings: a cashmere sweater, fluffy sweater, and pompadour haircut, and too tight fitting sharkskin pants, and
all right,
stacked heel shoes, and all of that. But fortunately, one night, these two guys in Levi's wandered into the bar, and I thought they were going to beat faggots up, But I could see they were like the cowboys that I had grown up around as a young boy. And suddenly I realized there was more than one way to be gay. So I started gravitating toward the butch end of the spectrum, if you will.
Okay.
And it wasn't long before I started having sex with those guys. And that sex was really interesting. Sex with the effeminate boys wasn't very interesting. That same bunch of people eventually created the Rocky Mountaineers Motorcycle Club, a gay bike club, motorcycle club in Denver. And I was the youngest person at age 18. on the back of, Harleys roaring up the highway to campgrounds and so forth. It was quite nice.
I bet it was beautiful Colorado. I grew up there.
Oh, did you? Where?
Denver.
Yeah.
Denver and Colorado Springs a little bit.
Uh-huh. Well, I had received my early butch lessons on the western slope of Colorado around my uncle, who had been a real cowboy. And he had a guest ranch and used to take trail rides up into the White River National Forest on horseback every spring to cut a trail. And you don't know what you've got till it's gone. It's like that song that Joni Mitchell covered, I think.
Yes, sir. I agree with you there.
But Colorado was beautiful, and I miss it sometimes.
I do as well. So from that point to now, you have obviously seen what we now call the lifestyle, right? If you want to use some term for it.
I think I have to put a plural. I think it has to be lifestyles.
Lifestyles.
Now.
So because so much has changed, I understand. I wasn't there.
Yes.
I'm only 38 years old, and so for me to even speak about the old guard, I wouldn't know anything about it other than what I read or what someone like you tells me, right? And I look at the way the lifestyle expanded so much, and you were a pioneer and you fought for it, master slave, the gay community. But as it's grown and so many more people have come into it and it's become so much more mainstream, I would also say it's become highly fragmented, right? Would that be a right word to use?
Well, I would say specialized.
Specialized.
Because fragmented is a word that has an emotional connotation to it. But specialized, I think, is an easier way to understand it.
Okay.
Just like politics in the United States has become specialized. As soon as you use the word polarized, all of a sudden everybody's hair on the back of their neck stands up.
Yeah.
But specialized, I think, is a way to understand these differences that doesn't drive people away from one another, but opens a door for understanding, or the possibility of it anyway. Yeah, there are certainly lots of ways to be kinky. And now it's possible in a more open and free society for people to follow their gonads to whatever's hot.
Right.
Once upon a time, when I came out into the scene when I was 18 in 1965, by the way, there weren't that many ways that were socially acceptable to be. You had to be heterosexual or queer, and that was it. But in fact, when you look around at nature, you realize that no two planets in our solar system are the same. They're all different.
Yeah.
There are lots of different ways to be a galaxy out in the universe, lots of ways to be a rock here on Earth, lots of ways to be a tree, a frog, a body of water, lots of ways to be a man, lots of ways to be a woman, lots of ways to be other genders in between. Because nature sometimes produces unusual variations that are unexpected. And any farmer can tell you that.
Absolutely.
So the message of nature is a message about diversity. It's not a message about uniformity. Mother wanted me to be straight. Well, if everybody was straight, it would be one hell of a boring place.
It sure would.
If everybody had curly auburn hair, it wouldn't be as interesting as it is. The message of nature is a message about diversity and variation, and that's what's natural.
I love that.
Well, it has the virtue of being true. I mean, I was, as I say, I'm a recovering Roman Catholic, and there are all of these institutions that want us to be uniform, same, homogeneous. And that's useful in some situations, but it is harmful in others. So I'm not surprised about the diversity in the lifestyles that we now have. But it's like the tree of life, if you will. I don't know if you've ever seen a representation of the tree of life. It begins with, single cell protozoa, and then it goes every which way. And that's natural. That's normal. That's what's supposed to happen with life. Absolutely. And so, yeah, there are lots of different ways to be kinky, and lots of ways to make love, and lots of ways to have fun erotically.
Absolutely.
The original rule was that we all had to follow what's called the reproductive bias. And that says that the only relationships that are acceptable are the ones that lead to a socially approved pregnancy. Anything less than that was frowned upon.
That's all. Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind here.
Yeah, no, I don't mind.
About 1965, and thank you so much for sharing your story. Now we fast forward to 2021.
Okay.
Sexuality, even radical sexuality, is very mainstream as far as where you see it every day. No one, it's not hidden. You don't have to hide it anymore. Do you think we become? I was watching an interview of yours where you talked about people back then. If you were radically sexual, they thought you had a mental illness. And
that's true.
Do you think that's still the way it is today, or do you think that and I don't want to say use the term vanilla, because I think everyone's got something that maybe they just haven't admitted it yet. But maybe for people who haven't admitted it yet, do you think that's how they still look at it, or you think the world's becoming more open to our desires?
Show me the person, and I'll tell you what's possible. If we have this conversation in Ames, Iowa, they don't know that much about sexual variation. If we have that conversation here in Hollywood, where I live, it's no big deal. I mean, I live in a big apartment building. There are 250 people that live in the building, 135 units. And the range of variation here is enormous.
Right.
I don't hesitate to go to an event in full leather, walk down to my vehicle, say hello to the other neighbors and so forth. They love it because variety is one of the spices of life. Absolutely. If you can tolerate it. I would not want to live in an environment where every person I saw was a different version of me. But there are people who want that. In Ames, Iowa, they would rather have people be more similar than different. Same in rural Colorado. You grew up in Colorado. You know that I know what I'm talking about. Absolutely. Denver is not Glenwood Springs.
Nope, absolutely not.
Or Meeker, or Rifle, or Telluride.
Yep. Even today, Rifle's still very different.
Well, who knows what they see in their living rooms in the wintertime? Yeah. What channels they restrict and what channels they watch. I don't know. The world is a busier place now than it used to be. What I also know is true is that humans as a group, as a species, are extremely adaptable, but it takes a while to adapt. And the rate at which the world is changing around us now is so fast that people can barely keep up. And this pandemic has proven that, I think, as dramatically as anything else would. I had thought that once the vaccination thing became more widespread, that people would start to calm the hell down. No,
Still crazy.
it's not happening. In 2019, I mean, I'm a private practice therapist. I see patients. I'm a trained, licensed clinician. In 2019, if I had one emergency call every 6 or 7 weeks, that was kind of normal. Now I have 3 or 4 a week.
Oh, wow.
Because people's coping skills have been frayed a lot.
So there's just too much coming at them all the time?
There's too much stuff coming at us, yeah. All at once. The pandemic itself is a nightmare.
Yes, sir.
It's going to kill millions of people before it's done, and I don't know that it'll ever be done. We had the last pandemic. Well, the last pandemic's still going on, and that's AIDS, HIV. People don't think about it much because it's a fairly confined virus in the United States anyway. It's raging in Africa and in other places. And HIV had a kill rate of about 70%.
Oh, wow.
When it first appeared. COVID has a kill rate of about 1.7%. But it's global and it's easy to catch compared to HIV. HIV was hard to get. But gay men had practice with virus and pandemics. So we were a little better equipped to cope with the nightmare of what's happened. But there were lots of things that fell after that. The virus, then there was all of the businesses closing and people losing their jobs and unemployment. And what are we going to do to feed our kids?
I gave up.
I gave up my office. I had a beautiful office about 5 blocks away from here. And I happened to be interested in microbiology. So I saw this coming in about the 16th or 17th of February last year. I saw this reports coming up in the journals. And I thought, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. And I have to close my office. I have to give up my office. So I migrated all my patients on Zoom now. And I'm done with offices. I can't go back there.
And I know this is maybe off topic, but do you find that your practice runs just as smoothly with using the technology as opposed to being in person?
It depends on the diagnosis. There are some diagnostic situations that are just as easy to manage this way. But there are some that are very difficult to manage as well as if you were in person.
Okay.
It depends on what's going on with the person. If somebody has a lot of crazy hallucinations and paranoid stuff going on, that's a lot trickier to manage in this environment. If they're in your office, you can see the whole person in real time all at once. I mean, for all I know, you could be naked below the waist right now and I wouldn't know it.
Trust me, you wouldn't want to know it.
But you see my point.
I don't have that good a body anymore, Guy.
You see my point. I mean, for all you know, I'm naked right below. There's a lot of humor that's popped up around that lately.
I don't know if we'll. I don't know if I could put it past either one of us to maybe beat it underneath, just so we can say we did it.
Yeah, why not? What the hell? Anyway, life is more complicated now, and it takes a whole bunch of skills that most people just don't have. But they're trying to catch up. God love us.
They're going to have to, because I'm with you. I don't know whether I'm no fortune teller. I don't know what the future looks like, but I know it's going to be different.
Well, I can tell you what the future is going to look like.
Good.
Because as human populations come closer to wild animal populations, humans are going to be exposed to animal viruses more frequently. If you're busy cutting down the rainforest in Brazil or Southeast Asia or China because you want, a place to have a field that's yours, and you clear all the trees away and you try to plant crops and raise a family and do all of that, there's no supermarket on the corner. If you want protein in your diet, you have to go into the jungle and kill bush meat, monkeys, other animals, and you have to consume that flesh, or you believe you do. They're not all vegetarians out there on the frontier,
Oh, yeah.
And as long as that's going on at an increased rate, and it is because our population is expanding, human populations are going to be exposed to viral realities. This is bad enough with COVID. Can you imagine what would happen if we had 3 different viruses working on us all at the same time?
At this scale? Wow.
Just wrap your head around that for a minute.
I don't want to.
Yeah, because the science was able to work as fast as it could, and it wasn't as fast as we wish it was. And it had one enemy. Imagine 2 or 3 of these going on at the same time.
Well,
yeah, I just spoiled your day, didn't I?
Now that you've thoroughly ruined my day.
Yeah. Well, nothing's to say it couldn't happen.
Well, no, it couldn't. And you make a good point. I mean, the more we expand and the more we take over, the more we interact. You're right.
It would be a lot easier if we gave up animal protein and just started being vegetarians. Because
are you a vegetarian?
More and more, I am. I know that they take your Colorado membership card away if you claim to be anything except a meat eater.
Yeah, if you don't eat beef, you can't exist, right?
something like that. Anyway, the people who live the longest and have the healthiest lives are the ones who don't eat much meat. The Mediterranean diet. Well, some of those people live very, very old. A lot more people who are 95 in the Mediterranean area than there are in the US.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure.
Anyway, we digress, I think. Or do we?
We did, a little bit. We do a little bit. But that's okay, because that keeps it interesting. Yes?
Well, I
keeps us thinking.
I'm one of those people who finds the world fascinating. And I'm curious about damn near everything. And I'm like a sponge for information about all kinds of different stuff. I know a lot about a little and a little about a lot.
I like it. I like it. This next one I think will be pretty easy. I like to ask this question of people who've been in the lifestyle a long time, because it meant a lot more back in the day than it does today, I'm sure. Mentorship.
Oh, well, back in the day.
Yeah, I asked that question about mentorship, and I get an answer a little different each time. And so, with the value of mentorship today, is it the same as it was back in, let's say, when you first started? Because you didn't have the internet, you didn't have all that. You had to have mentors. But I still personally think that mentors are important.
Well, education is what's important.
Exactly.
Unless, of course, you want to reinvent the wheel yourself just because you're stubborn. But if you see somebody handling a bullwhip, for example, and you think it's hot or sexy and that you might like to try it. And if you don't go up to somebody who's doing it well and say, hey, that looks pretty interesting. Would you mind spending 10 minutes with teaching me how to do that? If you don't do that and you try to run one of those single tails by yourself, you are going to get hit in the head with the whip. You are. It's inevitable. That snake whip is going to bite you in the backside.
And it hurts.
Well, yeah, but you'll do it over and over again because your pride won't let you ask for directions. You know?
Yep.
When I first came out into the what did we call it? The leather scene is what it was originally called, the leather scene. And that was because we could use the word leather in public without activating people's curiosity. It's not widely known, but following World War II, hello?
Yes.
Did you freeze up there?
No, I'm here.
Are you running other programs?
No.
You're not running other programs? Because your internet's not great. Anyway, following World War II, there were a lot of motorcycles that the couriers had been using to carry messages back and forth during the war in Europe. They were not Harleys, by the way, they were Indians motorcycles. So after the war, the government had all these motorcycles that didn't know what to do with. So it made them available to servicemen. For $50, you could have a motorcycle.
Wow.
The soldiers in Europe spent all their salary, so they didn't have any money to buy them. But the soldiers in the Pacific didn't have anywhere to spend their money. So when they were mustered out of the service along the West Coast, they had money to buy these motorcycles with.
Very nice.
And so they bought motorcycles. And for a lot of those guys, it was like real freedom, because most families during the war years and just before the war years, there was one car to serve the whole family. So the idea of having your own personal transportation in the form of a motorcycle, and in California, where you could ride year round, so the motorcycle culture was born from the vets mustering out of the service following World War II. Some percentage of those soldiers, of course, were gay. And so the gay motorcycle clubs started to happen in 1954. Took about 10 years. But that's really where the genesis of the modern old guard, if you will.
Yep.
They didn't think of themselves as old guard. I'm second generation old guard. But those guys didn't call themselves old guard. We didn't have that label until the late 80s, when somebody happened to use it. The phrase had been around for a long time. There was a whole division in Napoleon's army called the Old Guard, for example. But by Old Guard, when the phrase first popped up in gay male culture, leather culture, it was to refer to the mentorship process by which information was passed from experienced people to less experienced people. But one of the main differences was that the information wasn't available to just everybody. I mean, I remember being invited to backyard barbecues and to, Sunday watching football, because they wanted to see what kind of character I had. Am I a good person? Can I pitch in and help do the dishes after we've all eaten?
Mm-hmm.
Am I a group-oriented person? Or am I just in it to see what I can get out of it personally? No, when mother threw me away, I needed a replacement family. So here, all of a sudden, we're a bunch of gay men, almost all of them older than me, of course, who were hanging out with one another and were doing the things that families do. We didn't call it that, but that's what was going on.
Sure, absolutely.
And it felt good. But they watched me carefully to see whether or not I had the right stuff, whether or not I was qualified to have the exotic information about how to launch erotic experiences that were transformational, as opposed to just having rough sex.
Absolutely.
And it was hard for me to get laid at that time because the older experienced guys looked at me and figured, how the hell can an 18-year-old be any interesting? He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how to be kinky.
Right.
All I knew was what was sexy. And I moved toward it and away from things that weren't. Eventually, some of the guys took their chances with me and played with me and had a good time. So then they would talk amongst themselves and somebody else might want to play with me later. But it was very hard for me to get any attention at first.
Was it?
Yeah, because nobody figured that there was a good time to be had by this green kid, inexperienced. And I had a lot of pimples. I wasn't a pretty kid. I'm still not a pretty kid, unfortunately, but anyway.
So that speaks a lot for the mentorship of that whole scene, that whole way of doing it.
And then we started having organizations that were not motorcycle clubs appear, like the one you're in, for example.
Absolutely.
Or like the Eulenspiegel Society in New York City, or the Society of Janus in San Francisco, or the National Leather Association that once upon a time had chapters all over the country. And one of the reasons those groups formed was because there were people who'd been excluded by the old system, and now they wanted to create these new organizations because they didn't like the exclusive control over who got to learn what. In other words, they wanted to democratize kink information.
That's a really good way to put that.
And when that happened, the tent flaps went up, and all you had to do was pay a $5 membership, and you could come to any meeting. Just show up and not make an idiot out of yourself, and you could hear a lecture on how to do piercing correctly. Previously, you had to be an insider to have that information. And the insiders had to vet you without you knowing you were being vetted. And if they decided that you were qualified to have this exotic knowledge, how to do a piercing scene, how to do a scene with clothespins, how to manage pain in somebody else's body in a way that's hot rather than just angry.
Yeah.
How to make body stress add to the erotic moment rather than, ow, fuck, that hurts too much.
Yep.
That's an art form.
It is.
That's a craft. And that's the difference between whether BDSM adds to who you are or subtracts from who you are. And that was the exotic knowledge that was closely held before these large organizations sprang up. And of course, once they sprang up, the tent flaps went up, anybody could join. And all of a sudden, a bunch of loser types had access to this information. And all of the big organizations ended up with terrible growing pains. The National Leather Association experienced a $25,000 embezzlement by its treasurer. And that from which the National Leather Association never fully recovered. So the vetting process was a way to be self-protecting of exotic information. Because some of what we do is dangerous enough to cause loss of life.
Yep.
Or limb. And so you want to make sure that you get the right people with that information and not the wrong ones. When was it? It was about maybe 15 years ago. I got a call from a group based in San Diego. And they said, Mr. Baldwin, our group down here, we've lost a lot of gay men. It's mostly straight now. And we'd like to have the gay members of the community come back into our group. And therefore, we want to invite you down to teach a class because we think that your name will draw gay men back into the fold. And I said, really? I said, what do you want me to teach? And they said, well, we've talked about that. We think edge play is what we want you to teach. And I said, I'm sorry, then I have to turn you down. And they were, well, why? And I said, who's going to come to this thing that it's going to be publicly announced, right? Come in here, Baldwin, talk about edge play. So anybody can just walk in and make a $5 donation and sit down in the back of the room and learn about edge play. I said, you might as well hand AK-47s or M1 automatic weapons out at the door. I want no part of it.
So with that being said, people like what we're trying to do at FTK, which is bring education to the people who need it and want it. Do you think in some ways
That's two different groups.
Well, do you think in some ways we're doing a disservice? We know that there's people out there that are using our information for bad.
Yeah.
That's human nature. You can't, there's bad seeds everywhere.
Well, hold on a minute. Any group that is in possession of esoteric information has always restricted access, whether it's the Boy Scouts or whether it's the Jesuit Society or whether it's the Masons. There are insiders and outsiders. And in order to be an insider, you have to be qualified. As soon as you start democratizing information that could be dangerous, it will be dangerous for some percentage of the people. So we talk about the diversity that's happened in our world. The 11 men that I know who've died in BDSM scenes have all lost their lives. Without exception, have all lost their lives since the democratization of this knowledge happened.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying.
And the reason is that they all didn't believe that the rules applied to them. So they cut corners. You know, if you go online, you can find on porn sites all kinds of stuff that claims to be BDSM.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And what you will find, if you look for 15 minutes, you will find stuff that looks kinky, but is dangerous as hell. And when I'm currently doing a big research project on gay male kinky porn, and every time I run across one of those clips it makes me go, whoa, what are you doing? I leave a comment, and everybody else is saying, oh man, it's really hot, let's have more of that. So not me, I'm saying this is the most dangerous thing that I wish this thing could be taken down, because if you're going to use needles that way, start with a disinfectant like betadine, or clean the area, have a sharps container close by. Because when you see 50 needles come out of somebody's testicles with no protection whatsoever, you're wondering why that person still has any testicles.
Yeah. And Mr. Baldwin, I can tell you, that is one of the things that we try very hard at FTK, and a lot of other groups like mine.
Yeah, all the groups do.
We try so hard. We all have the same problem, and I don't know if there's really like you said, I mean, with it being as open as it is, there may not be a solution. Just keep teaching. Just keep teaching is all we can do.
Well, it gets worse than that, because one of the things that happens now that never happened before, and certainly never happened in the gay male world, is kink as entertainment. So you go to a party and you see people up on stage using knife play, for example. Well, here in Los Angeles, a few years back, an 18-year-old girl had her lung punctured with knife play during a performance at a thing. And she had a pneumothorax, her lung collapsed. And that's a medical emergency. You have to go right to the emergency room immediately. They saved her life, but she could easily have died. Some people were outraged and felt like the individual at the top should have been charged with reckless endangerment or something. I don't know. But of course, the DA came in and investigated the situation and decided that it was an entertainment staging accident, which technically it was. Not long thereafter, somebody, and these are all head events, I have to say, somebody was doing a big performance bondage piece on a stage, and this woman was mummified, face down, horizontal suspended. So she was like face down off the floor. Well, there was a failure in the bondage, and she fell right down onto a cement floor, crushed her face.
Oh.
Because as soon as kink becomes entertainment, then what happens is the audience gets jaded when they see this thing happen that's flashy and fire or whatever. The next time they come to an event, they want to see something more flashy. So the performers have to up their game, right? And of course, we all want our entertainers to be attractive. So that usually means younger. So we end up with younger people who now are very experienced because they train one another. but they don't have as much clock time doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can teach you how to execute a castration in maybe 20 minutes. You can stand next to me while I do it, and you can see how it works and so forth. That doesn't mean it's a good idea for you to do it.
Yeah, no shit.
Anyway, so our desire for attractive performers intersected with we want more and more spectacular stuff to see. And when those two things intersect, it's only a matter of time until people get hurt. Yeah. I've always been very sorry to see BDSM be used as an entertainment at mostly head events. The whole drummer contests used to have kink as entertainment in one segment of the contest, but I don't think they do that anymore. Anyway, I'm not the kink police.
No.
No, I'm not. And nobody is. Because once the information goes whoop out there, people can do whatever they want to with it because it's a free country, right?
Right.
They have the right to take the information and mess with it, just like people technically have the right not to be vaccinated and put other people at risk.
Well, the point, I guess, that we hope, and that for at least for FTK, is that we can get enough people to at least know and understand the risk. Try to understand what you're doing before you do it. And that's our biggest thing. And we also started because I was a member of a lot of groups that were very, they said they were traditional type groups.
Yes.
Right. And they had all these rules of who was actually what and what titles meant what. Uh-huh. And, that kind of stuff just didn't sit well with me because I believe we all have, I may be young, but here's what I believe. BDSM is an umbrella for all kinds of, as you said, specialized lifestyles, and that's the way you put that is, I'm going to steal that, by the way. I'm going to use that from now on. That's what we're calling it.
Steal it. I give it to you. I don't own anything. I don't own this information. It's not proprietary. If you need a concept, you have it. You take it.
We just want people to, like I said in the beginning, my biggest goal is to bring the community together as much as I can. And I know that may be a fool's errand, but we're going to keep trying.
Well, what does together even mean?
In my standpoint is this. Today, you know how it is. Today, everyone argues about what titles mean or what this means or how that should be done or whose dynamic is this. And, at the end of the day, who cares? What matters the most is, are you happy? Are you satisfied? And we all, I think, would be better off working together to have education and training and teaching and not argue about, who lives what way. To me, who gives a shit? I just want everyone to be happy and fulfill their desires and not be judged for who they are.
Well, there's this strange belief out there in the world that the way that gay men did it is the right way just because it was the first way. But the problem is that's just ignorant.
What you said about old guard generational eras made so much sense to me.
Well, people say the old guard like it was some global uniform policy, but it wasn't uniform at all. And I got to tell you, if I had $5,000 for every hour that I have spent explaining this, I could retire in a style to which I could never become accustomed. I'd be rich beyond imagining. Let us say, for example, that in Phoenix, Arizona, the most experienced guys there were Manny, Mo, and Jack. And they knew a lot, so they taught a lot of other people. And Manny taught his way, and Mo taught his way, and Jack taught his way. Once upon a time, they were all three in the same motorcycle club when they were young. But, excuse me a second.
Yes, sir.
In the meantime, okay, do I have to do anything about that? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Please don't apologize.
In the meantime, they were all members of the same motorcycle club when they were young men, okay? And two of them had been in the military. Well, in the military, junior officers walk on the left. Wait, is that right? Yeah. And the reason for that is that in the old days, with sword play, you were presumed to be right-handed. So if I'm the senior officer and the junior officer is over there, I get to defend myself with my right arm, and he gets to defend himself with what would be my left arm. So I got two swords going on here to protect me because I know more and I'm more valuable because I'm the senior, right?
Gotcha.
So the junior officer is exposed in trying to protect me. So bottoms and subs walk on the left. Except that Mo lost his hearing in his left ear. So his sub has to walk on the right side so that Mo can hear him out of his good ear. So all of the people that radiate out from that pod learn that the subs walk on the right side. And the other two senior people in Phoenix have their subs walk on the left. So these are like local barons, each with their own needs and their own style of doing things. Well, the kid that Mo trains about all this old guard protocol gets a transfer, and he has to go to Indiana for his new job, right? So he now knows a lot because he came from Phoenix, and that's an educated community. So the people in Indiana now, they want to learn about Florentine or whatever the fuck it is, right?
Right.
And so he's going to teach his way, the Phoenix way. Oh, but it isn't the Phoenix way. It's just one of the Phoenix ways. And so this stuff, these habits proliferate, and they take on the character of the local values. That's why older Leathermen in places like Boston and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. tend to be more formal. Oh, Atlanta also, because those towns prized formality in the 19th century. And that kind of stuff stays with you. I'm from Colorado, where we had this backslapping Western hospitality. Come on in.
Right. Okay.
Much more casual, much more relaxed, not so stuffy. I mean, there were uniform fetishists in Colorado when I was coming of age there. But I didn't like the fact that they were worried about getting too much grease on their uniforms because the dry cleaning was so expensive. So I tend to gravitate toward the outlaw motorcycle people. And that was the population that I hung out with. There were still guidelines and still protocols, but they were very different. They weren't walk on the left. They were, you don't touch another man's motorcycle without an invitation to do so.
So I mean, it's everyone is different. It all depends on what you surround yourself with, right?
Yeah, and what the background of your own education is.
Right.
I mean, if you grew up believing, because Mo couldn't hear out of his left ear, that subs are supposed to walk on your right. Even if you can hear out of both ears, that's what you're going to do. You're going to have your lady walk on the right. Is it a man or I don't know if you're gay or straight, but your sub of whatever gender is going to be on the right because that's what you were exposed to when you were young. And it became a habit, and that's what felt natural to you.
And that's where she walks too.
Yeah, well, okay.
That's where she walks. Two paces to the right.
That is not old guardian in the sense of gay male. The gay male was what it was, and people who are not gay men need to devise perfectly legitimate protocols that feel right for y'all.
Yeah.
They don't have to copy anybody else's. Gay male is not better. It just served us well. And we were under the influence of a lot of military stuff because so many of us came out of World War II.
Sure.
The next big war we had was Vietnam, which was a disgrace. And so a lot of the vets that came back from that didn't have all that, spit and polish, because they were exposed to hallucinogenic drugs and marijuana in Vietnam. And they came back with that. And so that whole generation of gay leathermen was very experimental with substances and very much more relaxed and far more spiritual, I might add.
Yeah.
And that was what brought a lot of the spiritual influences into the gay male leather world tent, if you will.
And that, that's also something that's in my dynamic, spirituality.
Yeah, mine as well, deeply.
I know I've kept you for a long time, but if I could ask you one more question.
Yeah, see, I get long-winded. I'm sorry. And
don't be.
The question sounds.
I'm good to go. I could sit here till 3:00 this afternoon, but I'm sure you might have other things to do. But there's one other thing that I really do want to ask.
Yeah, let's hit me with it. What is it?
The future of our lifestyles. I mean, your knowledge, you pass on the torch. I mean, you have knowledge. You have a lot of knowledge, and you pass on the torch in a lot of ways, through your books, through these interviews, through the articles that you write, the events that you've done. If you could pass on one thing right now to all the new people who are coming in, and let me tell you, we get people coming in FTK every day that have no idea what they're doing, and they're frenzied like you wouldn't believe. They're running, trying to grab a hold of everything.
Oh, I believe it.
And we try to tell them to slow down, but they don't listen. What is the most thing that you would like for those folks to know?
That sounds like it's going to be a complicated question, but it's an easy one to answer. Thanks for saving it to the end. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Announcement. Now hear this. Anything that's powerful that exists in nature can create in exactly equal proportion to which it can destroy. Think about the powerful things in nature. Wind exists in nature, powerful, creative, destructive. Water, powerful, creative, destructive. Nuclear energy, powerful, creative, destructive. The sun runs on it. The center of the planet is a huge nuclear power plant. Creative, destructive. Love exists in nature. It exists in human nature. It's powerful, it's creative and destructive in equal capability. Sexuality, powerful, Creative, destructive. BDSM, powerful, creative, destructive. It's the yin and yang design of the universe, of balance. Weapons, powerful, creative, destructive. Politics, powerful, creative, destructive. Fear, powerful, creative, destructive. Religion, oh, powerful, creative, destructive. Every time there's a BDSM scene that launches, the forces of destruction are waiting in the wings for anything like an invitation. If you do not have a clear moral compass to make sure that you manifest these energies, these powers, these capabilities, this art form, these art forms, this music, this erotic music that we know how to compose on the spot, that is so transformational to the point where it's holy, in my view. You need to make sure that you you cast those spells with good intentions, not evil ones. Luke Skywalker. No. What's his son's name? Anakin Skywalker.
No.
Is talking to Yoda. And he says, is the dark side stronger? And Yoda says, no, it's not. But it must only be used for knowledge and defense, never for attack. These ideas, this is not my idea that I've just articulated here. This is an ancient idea. But when you are using abilities that are not common in our society, they are held by a few people, really. You need to make very certain about your intentions. Because when you cast kinky spells, you can destroy in equal proportion to which you can create.
So well put.
Forget that at your peril, ladies and gentlemen. That's the one thing.
That is so well put. So well put.
Well, I didn't, I wasn't born with that idea. I came to that awareness the hard way, of course.
That's the knowledge that you bring to the table. Guy, thank you so much for doing this. I can't wait. I sure hope that I get to meet you in person.
I don't smell any better in person.
That's good, because neither do I. But I promise, here's what I do promise you. When I meet you in person, I'll at least start with my pants on.
I can't make the same promise. No.
Thank you so very much for doing this with us.
Let's do it again sometime.
I'll do it. Absolutely, I will. Send you a copy of this to your email.
Let me tell you something. One of the things that old people, all old people, fear the most is that we will go to our graves with what we have learned unshared.
Yeah.
That most of what we know will go to waste when we die. It scares the hell out of us.
Can I share something with you?
Yeah, sure.
The whole point of us doing this is because I have the same fear.
Well, yeah, because
the same fear that you guys, your torches won't get passed on.
Well, and the thing is that I no longer believe in the future. The future is unknown and unknowable equally for everyone. we need plans because plans give our lives direction. And most of our plans actually happen, but not all.
Yeah.
Now and then something happens and we need to pivot. If you come up with a plan and you will drive it to the conclusion you want it to have, it's going to bite you in the ass. Sometimes. The future is unknown and unknowable. It's nothing but a huge bag of possibilities. For example, one of the possibilities in the bag of called the future is that there's an airplane falling out of the sky right now and it's going to hit your house in the next 45 seconds. That's a possibility.
It is.
It's one of countless possibilities moving around. When Luke Skywalker is on Dagobah getting his training from Yoda, at one point, Luke is doing a handstand and Yoda sitting on his boot up in the air, and Luke has a vision. He says, "Oh, I see my friends. They're in some kind of a cloud city, and they're in trouble." And he loses his focus, and all of it sort of falls on the ground. He's got a rock and things. Yoda falls on the ground, and says, "The Force has shown you that this thing is happening to your friends." And Luke turns to Yoda and he says, "Will they die?" And Yoda goes, "Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future."
Exactly.
Because it is always in motion, because it's under the influence of people who are making decisions everywhere that are shaping the outcome. And if anybody doubts that, remember 9/11. There were a small bunch of people who changed the course of civilization on the planet in less than 20 minutes.
Isn't that the truth?
Anyway, it's been fun.
Thank you guys so much. Please stay in touch and let's do this again.
Whenever you like.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.